I'm born and raised in Singapore. I left for the US for college and I spent 14 years there, but now I've relocated back to Singapore. So very near and dear to me. The backpack there, for the longest time, 26 years of my life, I spelled backpack as BAGPACK. And I was called out by one of my CTOs that it was BACKPACK. And then my whole life was a lie. And so that really was, coming of age for me. And it's actually part of my handle now. It's backpack because I strongly believe that I can spell it however I want and people will still understand what I mean. And then that little family emoji there represents my family. I wish it was in a different skin tone, but yeah, that's my husband and my 2 young boys. And I'll popcorn it to Jocelyn.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jocelyn. So my emojis are pretty straightforward. So I'm a software engineer, although my title is CTO now, but I still see myself as a software engineer. So and I built most of my career in the States. So I studied abroad since 2013 and moved back to Taiwan in 2021. So I spent a lot of my careers in the States. But now I moved back to Taiwan to start my own startups. And the last emojis is representing of my family as well. I'm married, that's by me and my husband. And also this emoji representing that I am a people person, comparing to someone who is, if you think of engineers, you'll think of some kind of a geeky imaginary of some kind of people typing, in front of a laptop. But for me, I am a software engineer, but I'm also a very people person. So that's why I chose that emoji there.
So cool. Thank you so much. Peoples in the Zoom, can you also put down a few emojis that you think will best represent you? I've seen cats and dogs. I don't know whether cats or dog will win this time, but I've seen pets become a main theme here. It will be great for us to, if I can see 2 more of you with your emoji stories, then we'll move on. Oh, we have 2 flags as well. So the one is Singapore, I think. That's the same as Yumin's. Yeah, so Singapore, Taiwan. So we have some common overlaps here. Great. So moving down to the next page, another icebreaking activity. So this is a common meme chart where people usually have different perceptions of different things. What you might think, your friends might think, or your coworkers might think of you. When we think of female programmer, what image usually pops up in your mind? What is your typical image of a female programmer? Does any of the 6 images resonate with you? Or if you have your own description, you can also write down in the Zoom chat. If I can have thank you, Ihan. So can you type down the number in the chat box to show us what do you think a female programmer is and what do you really do? If you think female programmer is Barbie type of glamorous role and you really is Big Bang Theory type of person. So Yumin, can I ask you to share what do you think you do and what do you think people think? Or what do people think of you and what do you really do if I use the 6 different scenarios here?
It's a great question. I ask myself that every day. No, but honestly, I think, I don't know what 6 is trying to tell me, but looking at like Penny being the only person without a laptop kind of makes me concerned, but I think I most relate to 7, which is not on here. I think it's I think you wear many hats as a software engineer or a female programmer. It could be like, collaboration. It could be like, Jocelyn said, as a people person, you have to collaborate with other teams. You are problem solving, you are mentoring, you are learning about the big picture of the business. So I don't know. I think we wear many hats, so it'd be hard for me to pick one.
We'll have come up with a new illustration with a person with many hands. The 1,000 hands.
ChatGPT.
In Chinese, we say 千手观音, the 1,000 hands of Buddha. All right. I think this is great. Let's move on to the 3rd question, which is the final question for our icebreaking. Without revealing the answer, I would like to ask the crowd, what do you think is the percentage of female engineers in the tech industry? Type down any number in your mind, what percent, okay? So 10, somebody say 30, okay, I see 30 is a common answer. The lower ones are 5 or 10. So I think the answer from this survey is around the average of the group's belief. We see from the survey, maybe Yihan can share the source that we quote here. The average percentage of female engineering tech industry is 25%, meaning 1 in 4 engineers are female. So I'm not sure about your work environment, if you have a big female team members that you can interact with, or if you are the only one person here. I think this number is actually larger than what I expected. I feel hopeful with this. In Alpha Chem's community, our learners ratio is 50-50. So with the flexibility, with a more encouraging or self-paced environment, female participation in tech learning is a lot more significant compared to the traditional school system. At work, we see this is 1-4 ratio. We're hoping that gender diversity or female participation can be a lot more going forward. So without further ado, I'd like to go down to our, we would like to start our program today. I'd like to start first by sharing with all of you we are Alpha Chem, and what we are trying to do as a company is to help talents in Asia to build meaningful careers in tech industry. The way that we help people to launch their careers in technology industry is by empowering learners with sufficient tech skills, from programming to data analytics, data scientists, and whatnot. We believe that by controlling or mastering the latest technology, the ability and the possibility for you to create a career that will allow you to shine, to perform, is a lot more possible. So that's our belief, and we're hoping that this will not be a one-way journey. Next page, please. We're hoping that we can build an ecosystem with a different support network, with different solutions to allow different people to participate. All in all, we're hoping that this will be a better world when everybody being able to create a better career with a better pay and better life together. But this will not be something that we can achieve on our own. A lot of time when we design something, a learning program or a community, it relies on everybody's participation, learning from each other, or helping each other to share the experience and pay forward. In terms of our learning programs, right now we have different solutions to help people entering in the tech industry. We have a bootcamp program. I see many of the familiar faces in our community who joined this event tonight. We're hoping that, especially for female, ability to master technology skill is very important for us to be able to choose what career that we want to build. So bootcamp is a solution where we will help people without prior tech background to be able to establish sufficient skills to launch their career. But launching a career is not sufficient, or it's not just the end of the journey. It's actually just the beginning of the journey. So continuing to learn, continuing to grow your career through a community where we call RISE, so that we can help develop leaderships. It's not just technical ability, but also how we apply our tech skills to solve the business problems, how we collaborate better with different collaborators, from product managers all the way to your technical counterparts. So we're hoping that we'll be able to become your learning partner in your entire journey in the tech career. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our event agenda today. We are now at 7:52, slightly overdue. So we will start with Yumin, give us a 20-minute sharing on her personal journey. After her sharing, we'll have a 40-minute panel with Jocelyn together to address 4 to 5 questions that we observe from your registration form. A lot of questions ranging from how you start your career, how do you apply your characteristics and let you shine and manage your personal and tech career, personal life and tech career. And finally, we'll end with a advice to those who would like to build your career. After the Q&A, after the panel, we will have 5-minute short break to let everybody get ready to join the breakout discussion. Remember, in our name, everybody's name has a begins with CN or EN or a little cross. We'll let Yumin and Jocelyn to host their own breakout sessions to have a true dialogue with many of you directly. So we're hoping that tonight is not just a one-way speech that me or two of them keep sharing our belief. We're hoping that we have the final 20 minutes. We'll reserve sufficient 40 minutes of time to allow us to hear from you, to get your reaction from how their experience can apply to your situation, what you can share to the rest of the crowd. All right, so now I'll pass the image. I'll pass the desktop to Yumin.
Okay, cool. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Right, cool. So good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm just recovering from COVID, so a heads up that I might sound like a toad, and hopefully I won't have any coughing fits. I'm Yumin. My GitHub handle is It's Backpack, and I'm a staff software engineer at GitHub. I work in the communities department where we focus on products and areas and features that revolve around building and sustaining open source communities in the GitHub platform. This includes GitHub sponsors, discussions, feed, dashboard, profile, and other areas. Oops, should have advanced my slide. I've been building software for the past decade, and today I would like to share my journey and insights that I've gathered along the way. I became a mom for the first time in September 2019 and again in October 2021. And the births of my beautiful boys have been formative in shaping the way that I work and have opened up my eyes to the parallels between parenting and engineering. When I was little, I loved creating, and I leaned towards arts and crafts that gave me relatively quick gratification, like origami and fiber arts, such as knitting and crocheting. I could fold a useful box out of square pieces of paper, or crochet a coaster out of a ball of yarn, and those turning building blocks into something useful amazed me. And I also enjoyed the mathematical step-by-step formula to create these crafts. Later in school, I realized that I was good at math, not so good at physics, but I was really drawn to logic. So after I graduated from junior college, I felt really lost. I was like Pablo Escobar here. I didn't know what to do. I turned to my parents for advice, and they suggested going for a general engineering degree from a reputable school in the US. I got accepted into a school that my dad affectionately terms the Watermelon School, as he couldn't quite pronounce Carnegie Mellon. In the first year of college, every student, apart from theater design and architecture students, were required to take the Computer Science 100 class, which was Introduction to Programming. It was taught in Java, and I remember thinking at that time, like, I'm so screwed. I only know Java as part of Indonesia and the coffee beans. Java is a programming language, like what? And after struggling through the basic concepts and putting them through practice, I gained more and more knowledge and confidence. And one of the most significant experiences for me was when we had to code the Tetris game in Java. It's the thing where you have blocks and you have to fit the shapes, and when you complete a row, they like explode. And this was where everything I had learned that semester finally came together. I learned about edge cases, literally, about scoring. I had to revisit my math and physics to animate the Tetris pieces upon row completion. And this like solidified my interest in software engineering. And in my junior/senior year, I did my first and only internship as a Java developer at LiquidNet, a dark pool equities trading firm in New York City, and got a taste of the software engineering in the real world. At that point, I remember that we used Perforce for version control. It was so painful. And there were a couple of late nights where we had to release the feature I was working on. I'm really, really grateful to my manager back then who like took a chance on me and really equipped me with the tools and knowledge for, what was the beginning of a successful career as a software engineer. I graduated with my bachelor's and master's in electrical and computer engineering, and I was the only woman amongst the Singaporeans graduating with a computer science or engineering degree that year. And that was a pretty common pattern throughout college. As an Asian woman engineer, I was always part of the minority. In fact, one time I had a professor who mixed my name up with the only other woman in class. But, I've never really let that hold me back from learning and achieving. So just a little timeline here. After college, I relocated to Chicago for my first full-time job at Innova Financial, which was a consumer lending company. It was my first exposure to the real world and to Ruby on Rails, a new language. And I came from like a Java and C background. And I was shipping client-facing code to production within the first week, and it was very scary. But I got to experience and understand the dynamics between engineering, quality assurance, product, and sometimes design and support. And there was also an entire command center where releases were carefully coordinated and observed. And if I remember correctly, our release cycles were bi-weekly, and larger initiatives could take a month to coordinate. So we were moving at a very slow pace compared to many companies now do multiple deployments a day. Well, and also we were dealing with lots of money, and one small bug could really affect a person's livelihood, like double debiting a person's bank account. That was horrible. I didn't introduce that bug, but it was a bug. As I became more comfortable with the day-to-day aspects of a software engineer, I realized I was lacking a community that I could go to when I was, having difficulty navigating conversations or situations that I uniquely faced as a woman engineer. So I founded Women in Technology, WIT for short, at Innova, along with the few other women engineers and quality assurance engineers at the company. Coupled with that, I became more outspoken and convicted in my expanding domain knowledge and skill set. I realized the importance of having a good manager and how self-advocacy plays a large part in that. Remember that you are your strongest advocate and sometimes your worst adversary. And I was promoted to senior software engineer, which opened up an opportunity for me to join a small team and launch a new product in a new country within a few months. This was when I found out that I thrived in building fast with a focused team, but it also made me realize that it was time for me to move on from Innova. And changing jobs is never easy, especially when you are on a work visa that a company has to sponsor you for. However, whenever I feel like I am no longer learning or growing at a company, I move on. I joined companies of various sizes, growth stages, and industries. But it wasn't until GitHub where I found my home, which is in the developer tools space. I joined right after Microsoft announced its acquisition of GitHub, so I got to see how the culture, processes, and structure changed over the years. But more about that later. Through changing companies, I got an awesome exposure to how different companies operate given different constraints. From a software engineering and app building perspective, it also showed me that there is a wide variety of tooling and third-party applications available for different priorities, different needs, and different budgets. And the software problems that you face for a user base of tens of thousands is vastly different from those that you face for a user base of 100 million. This variety of experiences also helped me build greater self-awareness and of my strengths and my interests. And while the companies I joined were each very different from each other, there were some key things that remained the same for me throughout. Communication, verbal or written, is very important. Joining a company that aligns with your core values is key to your happiness, or at least it was key to my happiness. And in order to become a better engineer, you need to be constantly learning and growing. And when you have all of that baseline fulfilled and combine that with advocating for your needs and values, you can and will go far. So a little bit more about GitHub. It was the first global remote first company that I joined. And the first project I worked on was suggested changes. And a pivotal project in my career was being part of the original team to create and launch GitHub sponsors. And I realized that on every successful project that I was on, there was always a diverse group of folks on the team. And I realized that having different viewpoints and opinions stemming from different backgrounds, cultures, and lived experiences really helped to shape the features and products to be more thoughtful, intentional, and inclusive. And this is something that I didn't realize until I joined GitHub, and that it made such a huge difference to my outlook by being exposed to it. And it is something that is so important and powerful that I try to seek it out now and then to encourage it in future teams that I join. And fun fact, GitHub was where I had my first woman engineering manager for the first time in my career. In fact, my entire reporting chain up till the SVP of engineering were all women. And I've been very lucky and privileged to have really fantastic managers who, genuinely cared about my career trajectory and growth. GitHub was also where I had my first focused diversity, inclusion, and belonging interview as part of the multiple rounds of interviews that I went through. And when I joined there, they were just forming the first employee resource group for Black Hubbers. And today we have multiple ERGs for marginalized genders, one for parents, one for neurodivergent folks, and many other identities. Now, journeying into motherhood. In early 2019, I found out that I was pregnant with our first, and I remember a wave of mixed emotions coming over me, mostly elation and excitement, but also a bit of fear, a bit of uncertainty, fear of what that would mean for my career and what I should be telling my manager and the rest of my team. When would I be passed up for opportunities? How much time will doctor appointments take? I don't know. And then there were so many other questions like what happens after the baby arrives? Just endless questions swirled through my head. And I wanted to keep my pregnancy a secret for as long as I could because I didn't want it to jeopardize my career. And a few weeks after I found out, my manager actually approached me with an opportunity to work on a new product with an almost completely new team. There were plans to meet in person for, a kickoff meeting of sorts. And this was at HQ, which was San Francisco. And I was like, this is it. I have to come clean about my pregnancy. They're going to notice my belly. It's growing. And so I told my manager and my team after I crossed the first trimester. And, it turns out that I was so celebrated and supported in that it made me feel so silly to fear telling them in the first place. And fast forward, we had a very successful beta launch of GitHub Sponsors. That was the new product that we launched as a small team over at GitHub Satellite 2019. And shortly after that, I initiated and led the overhaul of our backend architecture to make it more sustainable and extensible in supporting things like one-time sponsorships and custom sponsorship amounts. And I worked with 3 new engineers that joined our team and set the stage to parallelize the work and make sure that they were caught up to speed. We had regular syncs, and I collaborated with the billing team, business systems, and other teams to ensure that we were on the right track in a timely manner. However, I was unable to see it through to completion as my baby was going to arrive any day now. And we all know that babies have no respect for their due date or their parents' Google Calendar of events. So somewhat by forcing function, I needed to find a successor to lead the project and hand off the remaining tasks. And there was a ton of planning and front loading of work that I had to do in time for a successful handoff. Spoiler alert, when I got back from maternity leave a few months later, the team had successfully completed and overhauled the architecture with very few hiccups. And that was like the best thing to come back to. So my firstborn arrived in September 2019, and my husband and I and the rest of our family were over the moon to welcome our little bundle of joy. But no books, blogs, articles, blogs, any kind of medium could prepare me for the changes and initial shock that I went through physically, mentally, and emotionally. Being a mom for the first time was a very bittersweet thing. And it was me saying goodbye to my past self. And I'm even getting emotional thinking about it now, and embracing my newfound identity. I did not touch my computer at all throughout my maternity leave. I told my manager to only DM me for important announcements that affected me. And when I got back to work after 20 weeks of taking care of my newborn, I found myself starting from scratch. I fought really hard to seek the cadence that I had lost. I felt really unproductive. I felt like a fraud. I was also coming back to a new manager. This was actually the first woman manager that was mentioned earlier in my career. And with her help, I realized that I didn't have to chase what I once was. I just had to find my new cadence. I needed to, this is my older son, sorry. And I needed to afford myself time, great space, and grace to recalibrate my expectations. I declared knowledge bankruptcy and likened my return to work to starting from a new job from scratch. But there was also a quiet confidence in me that if I could grow a human in my belly for 9 months, go through an emergency C-section to then raise a healthy and thriving baby, then there really wasn't much that was stopping me from achieving more in my career. So after assessing my strengths, my skill set, and contributions to my team and department, along with the encouragement from my friends and other parents at work, I decided to aim for the staff software engineer position. So I worked with my manager to fill out my promotion packet. And at GitHub, you have to be operating at the role that you wanted to be promoted to in order to be considered for it. So I gathered all the evidence of my significant contributions throughout my tenure at GitHub and figured out the gaps in my promotion packet together with my manager. She would keep a lookout too for opportunities that would align with my interests and, fill out those gaps. And they tended to fit the shape of, here is a big problem, big enough to solve for the department, but it's currently very vague. We don't know what to do about it. Please figure out a way to solve this in a methodical manner such that it adds value to the department and more. And so I tackled, these opportunities, more and more of them. I got it, into a swing of things. And I finally got my promotion within a year of returning to work from my maternity leave. And I felt that all the hard work that I put in while juggling motherhood was super worth it. And it was also validating to see it pay off. But all this wouldn't have been possible without the village of supporters that I had. My family, my manager, my director, all the folks at work who I worked with and were willing to write a recommendation for me to include in my packet. And building and maintaining those, good working relationships were really key to my success there. And not to mention my supportive husband and now full-time nanny at that point, who really allowed me to focus on work when I needed to. And around the time of my promotion, I found out that I was pregnant with our second son. And so my husband and I knew that we needed to relocate to be closer to family, as it would have been too difficult to raise 2 young boys on our own. We didn't have family in Chicago that we could rely on in case of emergencies or to help us watch the boys. And with 2 boys and 2 parents, it's 1-to-1, you couldn't really tap out. And childcare was also becoming really unaffordable for us in the US. And so we decided to relocate back to Singapore. That was where I was born and raised, and most of my family were there. And so I was very, very lucky to be able to relocate to Singapore and still keep my job at GitHub. And I owe it to my manager at that time, who really supported me throughout all of it. And she moved mountains to make this move work. Yesterday actually marked the 1-year anniversary of working from Singapore. So yay, I did it. And so since becoming a parent, I have tried my best to embrace the challenges both at home and at work. And sometimes I giggle to myself and I notice, more and more so similarities coming up between parenting and engineering and my engineering values. And I term that per engineering. In a world of software, curveballs can come in the form of an edge case that you didn't account for in development or testing mode, but shows up in production. I think we're all very familiar with that if you've been, in the software engineering world. Or in the tech world. And in parenting, your kid could trip and fall at a playground and end up needing stitches on their eyebrow twice. You have to go to the hospital twice. No matter what, these curveballs, they're curveballs because they are unforeseen and we can't predict them. But what we can do, however, is build up our ability to be adaptable and handle them. Should we roll back? Do we fail forward? Did we pack a first aid kit in the bag? Where's the nearest hospital? Throughout my career, I've always had to lean on a village for help, be that my teammates, my managers, my mentees, my mentors, other teams. They are a good support system that I can rely on in times of need. Same with parenting. We rely on our partners, our other family members and friends for help. And when my older son came home from school with hand-foot-mouth disease, we had to send my younger one to live with my parents while, to decrease exposure. I still ended up getting hand-foot-mouth disease. So, curveballs. And when it comes to shipping features or products within some given constraints, a must-have skill is the ability to push back. Most of the time, you have 3 levers: people, scope, and time. And if you have 3 engineers to work with and need to get the feature out in 3 weeks, can you cut down on the scope? Are there some pieces that are necessary for the ship? Similarly, in parenting, when your kid is asking for yet another piece of candy, We can exercise restraint by saying no and redirecting them to a healthier snack like an apple. So my son eats an apple like twice a day now. I guess that's what we get. And when we iterate on a current product by taking customer feedback into account and producing a better version, we are shipping to learn. And that is key in software or in a tech world to ensure that you remain current with your customers' needs and you're building a product that is relevant to them and that is something that they want. In parenting, there are countless examples where we have to ship to learn. Figuring out your baby's sleep patterns, what they like to eat, their favorite snacks, their favorite swaddles, the list just goes on. Every day is a new thing. So some parting thoughts. Everyone has a different journey in software engineering. Today, I shared mine in the hopes that there are bits and pieces that are relatable to you and that it helps to add another perspective from that of a mom engineer into the mix. One thing I fear is stagnation. And so I always strive to learn and grow constantly. As the Chinese saying go, 活到老学到老. And in your learning journey, you will face curveballs, you will face challenges and changes. But remember, you are adaptable and resilient. So lean into that. Thank you, everyone.
So I'm hinting everybody with, please, well, either with your hand gestures, with those of you with your camera on, or put down emojis on the chat box. Thank you, Yumin, for being so open. Even I can feel your strong emotions, and thank you for being willing to be vulnerable in front of us. We have a long list of questions. I think a lot of your presentation has answered many of our questions, but I'm sure we will dive into some aspects. And I also like to encourage the crowd, if you have questions, either for clarification or your personal questions that you think Yumin or Jocelyn later on we will introduce. If you both of them will be able to offer some advice, please write down your question on the chat room. Our team will collect them. We'll decide how we will address those questions in our Q&A or later on in our breakout sessions. So regardless, just type down your questions. Nothing to lose, and then we'll know your needs. All right, so let me thank Yumin again, and I'd like to control the screen here. We'll be moving into our Q&A session, and before having our question, start shooting our panelists the questions, I would like to invite Jocelyn to have a quick self-introduction through your career journeys. Can I use the next step as the material for you to share?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone again. My name is Jocelyn, and I'm the CTO and co-founder of Kubi. So my journey, it's exactly these 5 icons. So I graduated from Taida in 2013. I was in electrical engineering department. So when Yumin mentioned that there's only 1 engineer graduating from CMU, I have exact same thing, but I think our ratio is around 1 to 9. So 180 male compared to 20 females. So we are always a minority. Yeah, and after graduating from NTU, I went to Stanford for my master's degree, also studying electrical engineering, but specializing in computer science. So after graduating from Stanford, I went straight to Facebook. It's called Meta right now. And I spent 3 years in Facebook working on news feeds product. So the composer where it has the little what's on your mind box. So our team is trying to encourage more people to post more. That was back in 2015. And when in 2018-ish, when Facebook is not as popular as before, I decided to join Instagram because that's where all my friends are right now. So I moved on to Instagram. And in Instagram, I worked on ads. So I believe most of the audience here use Instagram a lot, I guess. So when you swipe through all those stories and you'll encounter countless ads in between your friends' stories, that's from our team, because our team is trying to get the most of your attention from you so that we can get money from our advertisers. So that's what our team is building. Yeah, and I quit in 2020, late 2020, to start my own company, Kubi. And that's around the same time I moved back to Taiwan. So I've been a co-founder and CTO for almost 3 years right now. That's a little bit of my journey.
Thank you, Jocelyn. And just to ask a follow-on question, according to this journey, because we want to focus on, how do we build our career? How do we hone our leadership? Using your own example, it was actually quite recent, right? So you didn't leave Instagram until 2020. So your startup, this is a pretty new and fresh challenge. How does your past experiences at Meta and Instagram help shape your leadership or help you build your new startup?
Yeah, definitely. So I think having experience working at a large company like Facebook really helps me set up the right framework and mindset to build my team. So I do have a lot of friends who are also founders who doesn't have work experience before, and they will have some difficulties kind of imagining how a team should be like. But for me, I've been in Facebook more than 5 years. I know that what's important. For example, you will need to have a specialized teams, like a specialized team in front end, specialized team in back end, instead of like a team who can work on everything, who are full stack engineers. Sometimes it would be helpful, but in the long run, I do believe this kind of setup will be more efficient. And another example is how important management is. So, as a small startup, we only have 14 people right now, but we put a lot of emphasis on managing. So I do bi-weekly one-on-one with my reports and also my co-founder as well, because we know that great management is the only key, is the major key to the success of your team and of your company. And that's something not a lot of startups will be focusing on earlier if they're in an earlier stage. So I think those are the things. Oh, another thing that I think I'm influenced a lot by Facebook's culture is I do believe that engineers should excel at not only at their professional excellence, but also other parts like people, leadership, communications, or even cross-functionality, to ability to work cross-functionally. So this is the traits that as a Facebook engineers that this company is expecting you to do. And for me, that deeply rooted in my mind. So that's how I'm kind of asking or requiring our engineers in our company to do as well.
Got it. So I think startup is always constantly struggling with limited resources, deciding where you should invest either your time or the organization's resources, what roles you want to recruit and build. So leveraging your experience, helping you judge how you define important to your startup, what kind of culture, what kind of roles you want to build. But may I ask an additional question? Because Yumin also mentioned earlier in terms of how frequently they deploy different features comparing to the tempo could be very different from organization to organization. So Facebook and Instagram are already very established. Are there adaptations or are there things that you need to be very different from the days that you were at Facebook and Insta when you are running your own startup?
Yeah, totally. There are a lot of things that it's different. Like I think the most important thing is speed, because as a startup, we don't have a lot of resources, and the most important resources is time for us. So we are constantly running against time. So we need to be very lean, very fast, ship things, ship products in a really speedy speed. And actually Facebook is already known for shipping faster than maybe there are other bigger companies. But not until I have my own startup did I realize that what speedy actually means. Because right now in my company, we speed like we actually ship every 2 weeks, and every 2 weeks we have a new version, and it's not like just a minor tweak or like tweak on the button or something. In every 2 weeks, we actually ship a new feature, and that's the speed. Of course, it won't be like super polished because we only have 2 weeks, but I think that's the key to test out the market, to receive feedback from our users to see, hey, if that's something our user really wants. Comparing to my time in Facebook or Instagram, quality and stability is actually a lot of times more important than speed, because you have millions and billions of users. You need to make sure that people can access to your product when they need to access, and the traffic is the value of the traffic is so different, like compared to what we're doing right now. So I do see a lot of differences, like especially in terms of speed, will be like a major key difference between those two experiences.
I'm sure to control or to make sure that you focus on what is needed now and make sure that your team needs to focus on what you think is important requires requires effective leadership. And that brings to my next question, really is around female leadership. I would like to direct this question to Yumin first. I'd like to hear from you. How would you describe your leadership style as a female leader? How do you lead your team to grow and keep up with the latest trend? I'll ask Jocelyn to share as well, but just let you take a little bit break first. So Yumin, you are a staff
great
engineer.
Question.
Yeah.
And in order to be a staff engineer, you have to be a value multiplier. And I think that's the way that I view leading the team, is knowing that I play a big role and have a responsibility for ensuring that I help to empower the rest of my teammates, especially folks who are in the earlier stages in their career, and also making sure that I'm able to unblock them. And that could take, different forms. It could be like reaching out to collaborate with them, pair with them to build their technical skill sets, but it also could be helping them gain more confidence in terms of collaborating with other folks from other teams. And part of that is also making sure that I'm up to date with the bigger picture. What is our team trying to accomplish, and how does our team's work fit into the department? How does the department fit into the rest of the engineering org or the product org? What does it mean for our business goals and what we call like the OKRs, the key objectives, and things like that? How does it all bubble up into that? But trying to make sure that I keep tabs into the big picture, but distill it down to what they should care about day to day, because it can get overwhelming with a fire hose of like, this is what's important to the business, ABC. But then day to day, for them to grow as an engineer, they don't have to care too much about a lot of that, and they just need to focus on smaller things or things that will help them build their experience, domain knowledge, and confidence. Hope that answered the question.
Thank you. So this sounds, this makes a lot of sense. This will be what many people would expect their leader or manager could help them. If I can apply the female lens in particular, Yumin, how would you describe, how would you view this differently? How would you view this? Is there any characteristics that you can leverage a lot more than your male counterparts to allow you to be effective or to be of help to your team members?
I don't know if it's a characteristic thing. I think it's probably more of a lived experience thing. As a woman engineer, as a mom, I feel like I can understand and empathize with folks who are of similar, identities. And so I think I view it as my responsibility to be an ally, especially for folks who are sometimes need to work extra hard because we are not born a certain way. We don't look a certain way. And I think it was very much the case in the US when, there are some unconscious biasness and biases. And so I think I'm able to lend a helping hand in allyship, as well as now that I'm a staff software engineer, I have the social capital to help be a sponsor, to help coach someone. I can say like, hey, Diana, she's working on this really cool project. She's, leveraging these new technologies. I think you should really, reach out to her and, hear what she has to say, or, she's really doing cool stuff, and try to get that person's name out there more. That's what I think is more of like sponsorship, which is above, like, I think it's a step beyond mentorship, where, you coach someone. It's more about like you putting your name next to theirs and saying that, hey, this person's great to work with them.
So your life experience of your different stages of life experience, life events that you've gone through have shaped you as a shape you with different capacities, and then you will be able to you are able to apply your experience and your skills to different team members who might benefit from your coaching. Jocelyn, can I hear from your example? How would you describe your how would you describe your female leadership?
Yeah. So in Kubi, I actually have two hats. I'm a co-founder and I'm also a manager. So I often find myself trying to find a balance because I need to make sure my business works, because I need to make sure our company is growing, we're getting revenue, we have gaining more users. But I'd also need to make sure that my engineers or my reports are growing on the career path that they want to grow. So for me, I think what's more important is to put someone with passion and also with their own expertise onto something that's the business needs the most. I think if you can find the right match, then that will be a win-win for both sides, because the engineers or the reports will be happily working on the things that they can grow themselves and they have passion as well. And in the meantime, you can also leverage their expertise to grow your business. So I think that's the hardest part, because it's not it's impossible to find that match like 100% every time. So sometimes you need to tweak the career path of some engineers a little bit to match your business needs, or the other way around. You need to craft out some kind of business you think that's also important, but maybe not, the top priority, but because your engineers needs this kind of challenges to grow. So that's how I oftentimes balancing things. And I think as a female leader, one leverage that I often find myself using is the ability to listen and to empathize on people. Because the ability for me, because like I mentioned in the beginning, I see myself as a more people person. So it's actually not difficult for me to understand what the other party's needs or what their strengths are. So that gives me that superpower to help them to craft out their path and also find that balance and find the match between the business needs and what they want. So I would say, yeah, my job day to day is a lot of times about balancing things.
Thank you. So we hear that. So as different leaders, there's a clear objective that you want to, or a clear vision that you want to arrive at, and you need to rally or motivate or influence your team member to be on board and go to the destination together. I hear listening could be a good, important skill to relate, to empathize. There are also different ways that we might be able to use our personal experience to coach and build connections with our team members. So that they get motivated, so that they grow to arrive at the business outcome. Thank you. Excellent. We will talk a little bit about the realities, right? So we heard Yumin's story about your first child as a unplanned surprise, and then second child. We rehearsed this question, so I'll ask Yumin's advice. How would you suggest young professionals or female software engineers to take marriage or having kids into consideration when they're also managing their career? But I have a follow-on question, particularly for Yumin, because when I was listening to your story, I think it makes sense. Yes. Forcing functions help you prioritize, make hard decisions. You can practice negotiation, appealing to different stakeholders, all that. I can see the beauty of that, but I find the hardest thing is to switch roles. You earlier mentioned about identity, and switching roles is not just about how to play the role, but how do you focus and be effective at different roles? Sometimes myself, my biggest struggle is, had I have my full capacity to do one thing, I would be able to achieve it there, or I will to learn much more effectively. But constantly switching, not just because I don't have enough time, but sometimes my mind is not there. Sometimes I need to worry about different things. So that is my personal question that I want to throw in as an extra. I want to understand, how do we reap all the benefits that you mentioned? Or how do you deal with, how do you help yourself to play different roles at different times? So that you can get the benefit of, you get the different benefits that you mentioned in your sharing earlier.
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack. I'll go ahead and try to answer the first part first. And I wouldn't think that this is a suggestion, but more of something that I considered when I was planning for, for marriage, for having kids. It was actually a planned pregnancy. It was just like, very much like, I don't know how to tell the team kind of surprise. But I think when I was thinking about it, I was trying to figure out like, what am I prioritizing for, and figuring out if the timing was right for me. And was I at a stage in my career where I would have been comfortable being like, okay, I can take a short break. I'm okay with status quo, because I didn't know. I didn't know if like this meant, not advancing my career anymore. I didn't know like what was going to happen when the baby arrived, like how was I going to juggle everything. And so I was preparing myself mentally for, like that this might be a thing where I have to take a short break in my career. And then on top of that was making sure that I had a good support system. My partner and I make sure that we were on the same page. We also ensured that we had a good group of family and friends that were able to support us, whether that's emotionally or be physically there. That time we lived in Chicago and we didn't have family around, but my parents could fly out until COVID hit. But like I think a lot of it was just making sure that we had the right foundations and support system in place, such that if I do feel like it's too overwhelming, I had something to lean back or fall back on. And so that was something that I considered before, like, marriage, before having kids, is just making sure that you're on the same page with your partner. And also I think just maintaining an open mind that, things could go very wrong, and that it could be very much not the plan that you went for. And I'm a really type A person. I'm like a planner through and through. And so like, I went into the day of like, I had to be induced. And so like I went there with a birth plan, natural, like I want to have the baby on me for skin to skin, all of that. But then, after a few hours in the hospital, like I had an infection, my baby's heart rate was spiking, and I had a very high fever. And so we had to elect for an emergency C-section. And so everything went out of the window. And so at that point, I was just like, you know what, there like things there will always be hiccups, there will be curveballs. And so I think having the mentality set up to plan for these things, that the unknowns, was important. And then your follow-up question about like how to play the different roles. I mean, I still think, and in all honesty, I still struggle with that every day. But some things I found helped me is having a physical like calendar. So I live and breathe Google Calendar, because if the event is not on the Google Calendar, it's not happening. And so like with my husband, we have a shared calendar, and I put today's event. I was like 6:30 to 9:30. Do not disturb me. I'm locking the door. You take care of the kids, right? And so it's something that I just lean in so much to, that I even have points in time where I have like, I block out focus time, like don't disturb me. Like if you want to have a discussion, we can have, a meeting, but not during my focus time. Or if I have to pick up the boys, I have chunks of time in there too, in my calendar, work calendar and personal calendar, to show that this is blocked out time. I'm not going to be available. And so that's helped me, and as well as my team, realize that, okay, these are blocks of time that I'm not available for. Of course, there are some like, one-offs that can be, there's some like things that are exceptions. But it's also helped my brain just know that, okay, this is work time. And then at 5:30, it switches off. I'm going to go pick up the boys. And then I'm going to, make sure that they have dinner, bath time, all of that stuff. And then at 9 p.m., because I'm still working with the US team, at 9 p.m., I switch back into work mode, 9 to 12. I do that to like have same time with the US team. So yeah, I think like having the physical calendars really helped me, but it's hard. I mean, we are only human, and our brains sometimes are like monkeys. They just jump everywhere. And, while I am in so-called work mode on my calendar, I can be thinking about my kid who was, maybe was sick, or maybe had a rough day at school. You don't switch off from that. You never switch off from parenting. I think it's always going to be there. To me, it's easy to switch off from work. It's never easy to switch off from parenting.
Yeah, but we'll just quickly recap on a few key takeaways. First of all, I think major shout out to the husbands and dads tonight. We've been here for more than 2 hours. I think your husband, my husband, allow us to lock ourselves in our room. Jocelyn allowed, you are also able to focus, stay dedicated. That's why audience on Zoom, please remember to give us your feedback, because I really appreciate our guest speakers spending their time. Husband and dad on the chat room. Yes, so that support network, either it could be one husband or the entire village, however resource that you can rally, that is very important. Second, I heard Yumin mention that you are quite deliberate. And prepare yourself, anticipate what would happen if you want to become a mom, or if you want to have a family, or get married. How would that impact your career? I'm not suggesting that everybody needs to be type A level of planning, but sufficient planning or getting yourself prepared for the upcoming challenges might allow you to have the right capacity to deal with the difficulties. And then thirdly is the tool, the calendar thing. I love it because sometimes you just need to be managed as well. You need things to help you. Either it's Google Calendar or your nannies, whatever kind of leverage, but allow you to stay focused so that you won't be juggling around different roles on a daily basis. That is super helpful. Jocelyn, sorry for the long recap, but I also love to hear your considerations. How do you decide, or how does this personal decision come into play when you think of your career choices, either it's during the time from Facebook to Insta, or when you decide you want to start your own career? The personal and the career side, how do you consider?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely you need to consider both at the same time. It's because a lot of people ask me, why do you want to go back to Taiwan and start your own startup? But for me, these two questions is tied together. You make the decision because there's only one decision, but you just decided from a lot of different perspectives. But I think what's most important thing is you need to make sure you have your support system built. So for me, I married to my husband before I start my startup and I know that he's 100% fully supported me on whatever I want to do. Because I know that once I started my own startups, I would spend like 120% of my time on my company and don't give a shit of all this housework or other things. So that's my husband still like waiting for me for dinner. But I know that I have this support system so that I'm able to do whatever I wanted to do. But I also understand that because I don't have kids yet, but my husband and I, that's also in our life plan that we want to have kids. But I also know that at this point in time, like it's only in the early stage of my company. It's probably not a good time for me to have kids at this point. To be honest, I'm still thinking of when, because this startup journey could last for another couple of years, but I can't wait for another 10 years for not having a baby. But I think this kind of decisions and choices, you have to constantly balancing it and constantly ask for help from your support systems and make a consensus decisions on all those life decisions.
Yeah, so nice. So, well, I think apparently we didn't hear any silver bullet. There's no like standard answer. You should do this and then ABC, right? There's no, and we hear constant rebalancing, and then don't shoulder this decision on yourself. What I'm hearing is invite your important life partners or work partners, allow them to participate and help you so that you can shape the decision together, because the consequences is not just you alone you're facing it. It's probably your family, your personal life is also getting impacted. So I really love this. And I hope that the community will also feel that this is a struggle. If you're struggling with this, you are definitely not alone. There's no golden formula that we can offer to you, but I hope that these principles could allow you to start engaging conversations, facilitating helps in your support network. Right. So I'd like to take a slight left turn. We've heard about how our guest speakers overcome these challenges. It seems quite established. There are ups and downs, but they've gone through this. They've gone through this, and in their own ways. I'd like to focus on particular gender-specific obstacles. Yumin, you're a staff engineer, quite senior, leading a team, and then Jocelyn, you are running your own company, right? But in your tech career, what are is there any, and if there's any, what are the most difficult challenge that you need to face because of the specific gender that we carry? So maybe Yumin, I would like to start with you. How would you? Yeah, please.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like an obstacle per se, but in the past at previous companies, not at GitHub, but at previous companies, I felt at times that I was viewed as the token Asian woman engineer, the one that was chosen to be featured on the company page because I looked different. And it got to me to this in the sense that I started wondering like if opportunities were coming to me because I was a woman Asian engineer or because I was a good engineer. And it wasn't until like I met my, that woman engineering manager I was telling you all about, but until like I solidified like that, I am a good engineer. And she helped me come to that realization by objectively looking at all of my contributions, significant contributions from the past and in my career, and just taking a look at what the results and impacts were from those contributions. And when you take a look at it with an objective lens, you take out any form of like biases from it, you come to realize that all of these I did and did have a good positive impact for the team. It resulted in X number of wins. I don't know, any kind of like formula, but it kind of solidified for me that hey, I am a good engineer. I did this work. I honed my skill set. I put in the hard work. I learned and I asked questions and I grew. And so I needed to recognize that my accomplishments and recognize that it wasn't because I'm an Asian woman engineer. And if the opportunities do come, like I'm gonna just take my shot. Like even whether or not it's because I'm an Asian woman engineer or whether because I'm a good engineer, I'm just gonna leverage that and use that. And so I think objectively looking at my accomplishments really helped me to solidify that I am a good engineer.
Yeah, interesting. Sometimes I feel if the male equivalent version of you would be so critical to themselves, because what I hear is you are not sure about your own achievement. So that's probably sometimes a very female, highly correlated with this female gender. But what I hear is having a sponsor in the organization who's willing to guide you through and invest their time to help you reflect or demonstrate your work outcome. This really remove you from the self-doubt and really look at it objectively. I think in the US, I'm quite impressed that two of you also both mentioned that you have many female managers in your career. I'm curious, I'm not sure about what the Asian market looks like. So I will throw this question to Jocelyn. So I heard you mention that in your team at Facebook and Insta, there are many female engineers. So I'm assuming that it seems to be quite friendly to female engineers. Is there any observations that you see in US and Asia? What are the gender specific obstacles that you observe?
Yeah, so I was actually very lucky. I was in a team with more female engineers than male engineers. Maybe it's because I'm an Instagram team, and maybe because I work on iOS, like a lot of the female engineers chose that path. So I didn't have experience around like glass ceiling or female engineering kind of thing, and when I was in Facebook. But the first time that I actually realized that, hey, this is actually a thing, is actually when I moved back to Taiwan. So when I first started my own startup, I have a co-founder who is a man, and we sometimes will go out together to investors to get investments. And I remember there's sometimes the investors, especially if they're a little bit older, in the older generations, they will treat me as my co-founder's partner, like I'm just his girlfriend or just coming with him, instead of just a co-founder and we have equal status. So that was, those investors will just look into my co-founder's eyes and just talking to him. But I have a really great co-founder, so he will often, like in the very beginning, will tell them that, hey, she's my co-founder, so that you should just talk to both of us. Yeah. But having that some kind of situations like that made me still considering if I am not like a co-founder, or if I'm not confident enough, it's very easy to be questioned, or maybe to be questioning yourself and asking yourself if you are truly worth to be presented there, because the other parties are not treating you as your male partner. But I think after some situations like that, I feel like what's more important is you just need to build up your confidence. Because when you build up your confidence and you talk like a co-founder and you present your ideas like a co-founder, they will come back and treat you as a co-founder. It doesn't really matter what the first impression is, as long as you don't you don't hurt by that feeling, or you don't be hurt by that kind of attitude. Then build up your confidence and then talk with your confidence. I think that will overcome all this, discrimination.
Yeah, when I was chatting with Jocelyn and Yumin before our event, I was so impressed that they were in their early stage of their career. They have many different female managers to provide coaching to them. One of the challenges that I faced in my career was I didn't have enough female role models. So a lot of the time when Jocelyn was mentioning how do you command respect, how do you show your own style, how do you demonstrate yourself as a female engineer or a female startup founder. Sometimes when we're playing roles that we are not skilled at, some people, at least myself, I'll need to observe and try to observe and play out a few practice, then I come with my own style. But in some industry or in some positions where female leaderships are not abundant, your role models might be male role models, which might not fit you directly. So what I want to call out is we don't need to rely on a organization or a reporting line for us to get exposed or have female leader or role model support. Communities like this, I know that Yumin was very active in different communities. I'm sure that Jocelyn also have your different founder networks that you will have a chance to learn from different experienced founders. Reaching out to learn from different female role models might be a good source of energy or source of confidence for you to know that how you could shape your own style and let yourself feel more comfortable to pursue your career next step. All right, I hear my alarm reminder, but that means I still have 5 minutes. So I would like to end this session with a question. I actually want to go to our advice question. So many of the participants here today are at their early career, want to pursue or just enter the industry. I'd like to get Yumin first and maybe Jocelyn as a wrap up. What are the top few advices that you will give to these learners or junior developers when they are thinking to expand or launch their career?
Yeah, I think a key one in software engineering is to solidify your foundations, like be really, really solid in your understanding of key foundational concepts around engineering. And also it could also mean that, making sure that you have found the editor that you can work really quickly in, so that you remove any like distractions, like setting up your editor or, how do I copy paste something? These things should become like muscle memory. such that it allows you space and time to focus on what really matters. And that's like growing your skill set and learning new concepts, new languages, whatever it is. And then, it's also just having this mindset of a growth mindset, being open to learning and growing. It's going to be a fire hose. It's going to be an overwhelming amount of knowledge that you will have to, garner. But I think that, don't let that, tie you, like, don't let that discourage you, because it is a very, very normal step when you are in an early career stage. I remember facing that when I first started too. I didn't know what the hell is a for loop? Like, why is it doing this? But then today I'm like, okay, a for loop, no problem, right? So like things like that. And then I think also just asking all of the questions. It's okay to like not know everything in the room. I can tell you that even the most principal software engineer doesn't know everything as well. So it's okay to ask questions, do it. It will help you in the long run. And it will help you build like your knowledge base as well. And I think the last thing is also like find your mentors, find the mentors that will be able to guide you in your journey and connect you with folks that might be in a similar stage as you, or, connect you with folks that might be able to provide a different perspective that, will help you expand your horizons. Yeah, I think that would be the advice that I would give.
Thank you, Yumin. Jocelyn, next to you.
Yeah, I agree to everything that Yumin said. I think those things are super important. I think, especially when you're still earlier in your career, I think being open-minded is definitely the number one top things that I want to remind everyone of, because only by being open-minded will you be able to embrace new technologies, new knowledge, or even challenge yourself with the things that you think you already know. And I think broadening your skill sets or knowledge base at the early stage of a career is very important, because that's how you can find out where your strength is, or maybe that's the only way you can know what you don't know. So I think be open-minded and learn as many as you can, or maybe build a side project. So I know a lot of early career engineers will be, very focused on their career, on their job, which is a good thing. But I also encourage people to do side projects on their own, to like build up things, because you're engineers, you have the ability to build up things that you like. And using that treated as a hobby or interest, it will also help you to build up your skill sets, and you'll learn something that you cannot learn from your daily job. So basically, that's how you can build up your expertise in other areas that's not related to your work. So I think that would be a very useful tool if you can build some kind of side projects. And lastly, I think reading is definitely very important, and because books is a combination of all the knowledge from people who are older than you, who are wiser than you, and they put all their knowledge into this little small 200 pages books. And by reading them, that's how you can get to those knowledge. That's the quickest way that you can learn through those knowledge, learn from those knowledges.
Great. So much great advice. I'm not taking more questions. I've seen some questions, and I think our speakers have provided principles that I can apply. And I also would like to exercise the mentoring spirit today, so that in our breakout sessions, please treat Yumin and Jocelyn as your mentors, treat your breakout participants as your peers. How will you learn and interact with them? How will you observe different styles? So if you have questions, bring that to your discussion after a 5-minute break, right? So I'll give our speakers a 5-minute time to, after being locked in the room for so long, go, stretch yourself a little bit. And then also to our audience, digest a little bit for what has been discussed. And think about, don't look for answers or exactly what to do for myself, but look for learnings, or what could apply to yourself, what could be your takeaways.